with JJ Abrams. So excited. I've met you on another show that I used to work on, but this is the first time you and I are getting a chance to talk one-on-one, and
Thrilled
I
to be here.
do appreciate you taking the time to do this. Let's get down to business, and then we can get all the fan questions and stuff out of the way.
Right.
The play that went wrong. Amazing.
Oh, so glad.
Now, the story I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just this was some downtime while you were shooting Star Wars over in England, and
That's
you
right.
went and happened to see this play on the West End.
It was a weekend. I looked to see what was playing. There was a play called The Play That Goes Wrong. I thought, that sounds interesting. I bought a ticket, went to go see it. Hadn't laughed that hard since I could remember. The audience was going insane. I went to the producer and asked when it was going to Broadway, and he said we're still just getting it up and running here. I said if I could ever be of service, of help to bring the thing to Broadway, I'd love to. It was so funny and so irreverent and inventive and just a kind of a wonderful escape from whatever it is. And at the time, the stress of working on the Star Wars movie, I was just, anything that get me out of that head for a second was like a helpful thing. And it was, it's been such fun to work with this incredible group of people.
When I heard about you going backstage, I asked, because we got a chance to talk to the writers and the cast,
Yeah.
and I said, when you do Broadway and the West End stuff there, you get a lot of celebrities that do want to come and meet the cast because they appreciate the work that you've done and the art and the craft of everything. Sometimes they all say, oh, if I can ever help you out, let me know, and that's just a nice gesture. But it never really comes to fruition. So I said,
and that's how I meant it. And then they forced me to actually do something.
Right. So I said, when JJ comes in and says this to you, what goes through your head? And we all thought it was, it was very nice, but we didn't believe any of it. And then all of a sudden, your people were calling and talking to how do we make this happen? How do we bring it over here? And then all of a sudden it started to come together. And they said this is the first time they've ever seen that really actually come together.
Well, I will say that being welcome backstage, getting to meet these people, they are such a great group. And the cast that's on Broadway now is that original cast, and they are the creators of this thing. 3 of them are the writers, but they all originated these roles. So while they're there, I think until September, this is the time to go see them, that original group. But my interest in this thing was, only sincere, and it was completely self-serving because I just thought it was so funny to get to be a part of that fully formed Olivier Award-winning comedy. It wasn't like it was in workshop. It was a finished thing. It was a completely selfish act. So there was nothing altruistic about my interest in that play.
Real quick, just proof that I actually went and saw the
Dear
thing.
God, you're holding up a playbill.
Yep.
You're holding up a playbill.
You're going to have to sign this later, my friend.
I am not going to do it. Okay.
I'm throwing it away. No, but it's such a great thing that somebody in a position of power and influence that likes somebody's work says, I would like to help you do what you do, and that it actually comes to fruition. Somebody actually is kind enough to go and say, look, I have some influence. I want to get this done. I believe in your project. And here we go. We're about to do all this.
I hear you. But having been the recipient of that kind of, kindness or interest in the past, and getting to work with people that are simply inspiring, it's something that I'm grateful for, and I'm grateful I have the chance to do again.
You've had a long career of writing, directing, producing, all these different things, and one of the most recent things that I've really admired you for is you're going in that Steven Spielberg route where you're presenting, where you believe in other projects and this thing may not get done if I don't help it, or I really like this idea. It's not going to get through a lot of the red tape unless I throw my name on it. Are you looking to do more of that like that? Because in the 90s, he helped get animation and video games and all these other genres to where they are now because he took the time to present that.
Well, it isn't a conscious idea to do that. Every project, every step of the way, there's a conscious decision to get involved in something that feels exciting, that I want to see. So I'm sure that when Steven did, for example, Animaniacs, in the 80s, that was like a thing that was exciting to him. He obviously was a huge fan of Looney Tunes, of Chuck Jones, of that world. So getting involved in that was a passion for him. I know that when he did amazing stories. It was, he loved those kind of stories, and it was a passion for him. The movies he produced over the years, the stuff that Amblin did, I get why he was involved in those things. Something like The Play That Goes Wrong, it doesn't necessarily fall into any kind of category or obvious, it was simply a brilliant night at the theater, and I've never heard a crowd laugh that hard. And so my involvement in that was in no way a strategy, other than this is really funny. People will enjoy this. They won't forget it. And you can be 10 years old. You can be 90 years old. I've seen, this range of 91. You can't go, but up till 90. But it's an amazing thing seeing this comedy work, and to have been at all a part of it and at all a help is something that I feel lucky that I get to do it, as opposed to that I'm doing some kind of like service. I feel like I'm the one who's selfish and benefiting from the involvement in this amazing group of people's work.
I've talked to some people who are not on Broadway now, but like had done theater in college or some sort of theater, and have seen this production, and they said they take a lot of the things that are just utter nightmares for those who act in plays and theater, and made it part of the show. Like, if this happened, oh my God, in front of the audience, what do you do? So that's now written into the performance. Right. Everything, the stage collapsing, the lighting going out, somebody almost falling off the stage, all these things that are just nightmares for professionally trained actors. They're like, let's take all of that, and this is what we're purposely going to do.
Well, I remember when I first saw The Play That Goes Wrong, I remember somewhere in the second act, realizing that they had clearly gathered all of the worst case scenario things, and it didn't feel like a list. They somehow found a way to incorporate these things. Someone who forgets their lines all the time, an actor who says a line at the wrong place and sort of creates this loop where you go back to the beginning of a sequence. Physical,
which, by the way, brilliant. That particular scene. It's like, how long are they going to keep going? It's all right. It's funny. It's getting very uncomfortable. Right. It's, oh my God, they got to stop this. Oh wait, now it's becoming funny again. Exactly. It goes in this loop, and it's still going.
That's exactly that. The things that they sort of exploit in this are those unbearably painful, mistakes that, even if you have nothing to do with theater, even if you don't care or like theater, you can appreciate what it must be like. There's a sense of a kind of, vicarious, cautionary tales, version of, oh my God, it's like a nightmare. If I were on stage and that happened, what the hell would I do? And all these things. But what's incredible is seeing how much has to go right for everything to go wrong. Like the amount of precision and discipline and timing and
it's
focus.
all choreography,
but it's like invisible, because it almost looks like sloppy and sort of haphazard. None of it is, and that's the thing that sort of, it's a little bit like, they reminded me when I first saw them a bit of Monty Python in their irreverence, and it just makes you appreciate when you see what they do, what they have to go through, even in rehearsals. It makes you appreciate the math and the mechanics of what looks like just pure silliness.
And the fact they've been doing this so long that it's just second nature to them, where they're not like, I guess if you didn't know something screwed up in the performance, you wouldn't know as an audience member, because everything is meant to screw up in this thing. Yeah. They know it, but they're not going to let you know it. And the fact that they can just get out of bed, hop on stage, and run through everything flawlessly is amazing.
Well, it's funny. The other night, one of the actresses got sick during the
performance,
the first act, and literally had to step out, and the understudy had to step in for the second half. And I don't know if the audience realized that wasn't part of the joke necessarily, because it's just, everything is just constantly, going.
She got knocked out. Of course the understudy is going to come in.
I mean, it's sort of a perfect show for something to go wrong, but it is the dedication that these actors have. You're right, like the fact that they can kind of go in and do it that well. But by the way, they rehearse every day. There's always something that they're working on, even after years of having doing the show. Like, they're still fine-tuning things and perfecting.
I told Henry Lewis, who was probably my favorite in that performance there, and the weird thing too is that they're actors who are playing actors who are playing actors. So like, they have actor names, but in the play they have different names, so it's like a whole tier of lunacy going on. And I said one of the funniest moments in that whole performance was not something that was supposed to get a big laugh, but I caught it and I couldn't stop laughing. He was having a series of incidents on the second floor when the ceiling is caving in. He gets back out the door and makes a wrong turn. So while all this, you're focusing on the stage while the other characters are talking, he falls through the window set and he just goes, "Oh no!" And you just hear this big thud while they're doing it. And I don't know why, out of all the hilarious stuff in there, but that caught my eye. Like, that is one of the funniest things, because he just fell past the window and he just, oh no, like this wasn't supposed to happen.
There are so many things like that, and having seen the play as many times as I have, there are still things that I pick up on. And what you realize is that when you're watching this thing, there's something going. Of course, there's a central focus of what the moment is, but if you're looking in the periphery, if you're watching, one of the gags of the show is that there's a guy, Trevor, who's the sort of the stage manager, and he's up and you can watch him in his box, but you're usually not watching him until there are moments when you're supposed to.
Where you need to, yeah.
But if you happen to look up at him, he's as entertaining as what's going on the main stage. Like, there are things to look at constantly that for me are just sort of wonderful little discoveries, but it all speaks to the amazing, attention to detail and the way that these people have so precisely created, choreographed, directed, written, performed this thing. And anyway, I can't stress enough, while the original cast from the UK are here, to go see them before.
Right. They're done in September, and they told me because of their visa restrictions. So that's why they're done in September.
And I hear that the new cast that's coming in is fantastic, but it's a chance to see the people who created this play. It's
right,
really
and really appreciate it for the guys who wrote it and brought this thing to life. One other thing with that, and then we'll move on to some other stuff, is that get there early, because the play's already started and you don't even know it.
That's
like
right.
There's stuff going on as people are funneling in to get to their seats. If they're out in the lobby area, there's stuff always going on, and in intermission.
Right.
You think it's just a simple intermission. You go to the bar to get a drink or something, and there's people interacting there too. The thing never stops until the very end.
And by the way, one of my favorite gags is in the pre-show. It's a little thing, I don't want to ruin it, but it's this little thing that happens, that just kills me. And it's something that is so subtle and small, but if you are there early enough and you happen to see it, it's like a microcosm of what the whole play is. It's a little thrown away gag that never comes back, but it just says to you in the audience, like, we are so aware of what we're doing that we're going to do a fairly elaborate little thing as a throwaway. And there's just something genius about that for me.
Go to BroadwayGoesWrong.com for tickets. Again, see the original cast by September, because that's when the visas are up and they're heading back over to the UK. So please definitely check that out. You mentioned Monty Python. Are you a big British comedy fan?
Very much so. And Monty Python specifically, growing up with their albums and loving them. And in fact, it's funny, when I got older and would play some of their routines and albums for our kids, I realized how many things that have always killed me I didn't even understand. Like, as a kid, I was laughing at the rhythm of their comedy, maybe
like
even more.
Spam?
Spam, sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are all sorts of like specific references and things within scenes that I didn't even pick up on what they were referring to. I just knew it was funny, and it's a very weird thing to realize, so many years later, just how brilliant they are. And I was getting them, but on a more sort of sophomoric level.
I agree. As you get older, and you keep revisiting Monty Python's work, you start to learn more things that you didn't notice the last time you made a serious attempt at going through all of their stuff. Like, oh, I know what that means now. I know who this reference is about. I know that artwork that Terry Gilliam is using.
I went to go to they were at the O2. They did a live show.
I know, that was huge.
I got to see that. It was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, so jealous. I got to watch it online, but
it was just
so
amazing
to
see
there.
see them live doing the Argument Clinic.
The Argument Clinic, of course, a classic, but the over-the-top production from Meaning of Life, when they did Every Sperm is Sacred.
Come on.
Cannons, Irish step dance, and like it just kept going. And Eric Idle's just like, what else can we throw into this thing? And then he comes out and takes the bow in front of everybody, which is what you don't do in theater. You're supposed to be in line with everyone taking the credit. He went right in front, and I'm like, of course he did. This is perfect.
So good.
Were you a fan of maybe like Fry and Laurie?
Yes, but I don't know their stuff as well as,
Okay.
you know, like I have a lot of British friends who like talk about them in this way that, you know, and like sort of the early Dudley Moore, Peter Cook stuff, and, you know,
Rowan Atkinson.
Of course, you know, amazing stuff, but I wasn't as like well versed, you know, I can't like quote them the way I can with Python.
Star Wars, got to throw that in there, because was it hard to walk away from that franchise, or do you feel that it's, you know, in good hands and you did the absolute best to get this new generation of the franchise going?
I could not feel luckier to have been involved in that. I love Star Wars. I was worried. My biggest selfish concern was that after having been involved in it, I wouldn't love it. Like the idea that it would somehow ruin this thing that was so...
You've been a fan of so long, and now that you're in the grind, it's like, I don't like this anymore.
Like, is it getting too close to the thing? But I will say it's different because of the experience, but I love it as much. So I'm incredibly grateful and nothing more. In terms of what comes next, I'm exec producer of you know, 8 and 9. Ryan has just done an extraordinary job. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Did you find, I didn't think about this, but I saw a lot on the internet about the title of the next movie, The Last Jedi, that they thought it was one particular person, like maybe it was Rey or something like that, but Jedi is plural. So it could be like it's The Last Jedi, meaning the whole religion of the whole thing.
That's true.
Is there anything to that, or...
There could be.
Too direct. Okay, I figured. Just thought I'd throw it out there and see if anything would come from that. But yeah, a lot of people were just like, oh, it means this, it means this. But if you look at it at a broader spectrum, it's just like, it means a lot of things. Right. So the title can be misleading, or it could be dead on accurate. I guess you don't know until you see the movie.
There's no question that they didn't name the movie without a lot of consideration.
Right.
So clearly it's meant to raise these kind of questions.
Also,
what are you pulling out of your bag? What is that?
Wanted to ask you about this, because this was a character that was developed, but I guess was cut out of the movie. Constable Zavio?
There he is.
Yeah. What can you
Black series.
Yeah,
it's
what
nice.
can you tell me about this? Because I know the product line is done way in advance, so they put it out, but he wound up getting cut from the movie, so he's not technically in the story.
The movie was originally called Star Wars Constables VO, and we were like...
It was 5 minutes.
Does anyone understand what that is? This was a character, and there are many of them, that was created as to populate Jakku, and so it was a really amazing thing working with the Neil Scanlon and the creature department, working with the production designers on the movie, working with the special effects and visual effects, creating the characters. There were so many different worlds and places. Like when you think about what had to be on Jakku to make you feel like, okay, that was a place that had enough and a sort of diverse enough group of species and characters that you would feel like you'd get the vibe of it. But meanwhile, we obviously had things like, going to Maz Kanata's castle, where you had to have a completely different and motley group of people, and it had to feel like maybe there's some overlap, but it's a very different place. So this is one of the characters that we developed that was for Jakku, that was just featured in it. There was no dialogue for this particular character, but we literally once we chose characters we love, we would talk about kind of where they were from, kind of what they might be, and it's the thing that I think for me as a 10-year-old, I remember, made Star Wars, the very first one, so powerful, that you heard about things but you didn't necessarily see them, or you got a glimpse of something but you didn't necessarily understand all the details, but you could feel that they were so deeply considered, so that even though at the time, who knows exactly what George Lucas knew about the Clone Wars, or what the Senate really looked like, or who the Emperor might have been. These are things you didn't really see, but what were referenced. As a viewer, you just go, ooh, there's that feeling you have when you see, Boba Fett for The Flash, for the first time. Like you don't really get to know much about that character unless you start reading expanded, universe stuff. That character is one of those, one of the characters that we thought we want to have sort of in the movie, but in truth, we had so many bigger concerns, and there were so many more important things that we were dealing with. So we would have these characters that we thought, like, oh, we will bring them up if and when it feels right to. As we, for example, Captain Phasma was a character that we all just loved from the beginning. We loved the look, we loved the feel, we loved that she was female, we loved
shiny,
shiny. But obviously there wasn't an enormous amount of room for that character to do a lot. But we just thought this part of what the mission of The Force Awakens was to plant a bunch of seeds of things that in the moment we had ideas about and answers for, but knew that they were potentially worthy of exploration, and that character was just one of those.
It's understandable things get cut either for time or they just don't work as the story evolves. But did you run into much interference for things that you wanted to put in the movie but had to be taken out, or is it pretty much they know what you're doing, go and see what you can do with it?
Yeah, no, Kathy Kennedy and Larry Kasdan and I, at the very beginning, it was pretty clear that they were really open to what we wanted to do, and the truth is that they've got a big job overseeing not just what the movies are, but what will happen in all mediums, and that toy line, the toy you just held up, it's like they've got to be thinking about all of this stuff, and that's a big job and really a good question for Kathy, but they were completely open to the story we wanted to tell, and I know that as it continues and Kathy's leading this charge, I'm sure she's juggling a whole bunch of things as it goes, but there's no one better qualified for that job than Kathy.
One little sidebar with Star Wars, and then I want to get into Cloverfield if we could.
Sure.
Are you aware in the original Muppet Show, there's a scene with Mark Hamill and Kermit the Frog, and they're singing When You Wish Upon a Star? It's like amazing foreshadowing that all those properties become Disney way in the future.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that, but I'm sure I saw it. But it's because as you're saying it, I'm having this weird sense memory of having seen it. But if I have, it was probably when it first aired.
Yeah. No, like Easter egg, nobody knew back then. It was just a bizarre coincidence that you watch and you go, oh my God, you get chills seeing that.
Wouldn't it be weird if Winnie Pooh was walking in the background and Mickey Mouse
came by? They had this was a long con. They had this planned forever.
That was where their strategy comes from, is they watch the Muppet Show and they buy whatever's there.
Cloverfield.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the original, and I really adored the second one.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
I had a question about the second one, that it's one movie all the way up till maybe the last 5 minutes, and then it seems to turn into something completely different. Was that the original concept, or was that just pasting two ideas together?
The original idea was...
Because John Goodman is terrifying in that movie.
I know, and there's certainly a version where that's all that movie ends up being, and I'm sure for a lot of people probably is the better, smarter, faster movie. The idea was always to do a movie that was a science fiction movie that you're being told the whole time is a science fiction movie, but that it doesn't become that until the very end. And the idea was having this kind of crazy compressed space that the main character is in for the whole movie. No flashbacks, nothing, just you're in that space.
It's a hostage movie.
It is.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, suddenly, burst out and have it be, insane, and have it just be sort of madness. And the idea that it was terrifying in there, but infinitely safer than out here. And that once she's out there, the idea that by the end of it, that whole experience that Michelle, the character, goes through in the movie is the thing that sort of galvanizes her to not run away anymore. And at the end of the movie, the idea that she's driving towards the problem, and that it's this, crazy, terrifying, massive alien thing. It was this bizarre, meant to be a kind of origin story for this female character who has this ongoing story, but it starts off in the most unlikely way.
Any rumor to the first movie where T.J. Miller's on the Brooklyn Bridge and he's got the camera and he runs into another guy who's taping it? Was there any rumor that there was going to be another movie of the same scenario but from a different perspective?
Yeah, we that was something that we talked about and we thought was funny, and even
because that's never been done. It's like you're doing the same movie but from the other side of what was going on.
By the way, there are a couple bizarre little things that were planted in that film that were discussed as sort of ideas that might literally be sequels. The issue with doing a literal sequel to that movie, and we discussed that quite a bit, was the idea that beyond it just being a kind of repetitive thing, but and doing something that feels like it's like a classic old-fashioned sequel, which is to say the same thing but different, you know. It felt to us like there was a more interesting way of taking the sort of spirit of what Cloverfield was, you know, kind of what it was born out of,
right?
Which was this idea of doing a genre movie but in a slightly different way, and doing it, you know, telling a story that felt like this was a great date night, scary, bizarre, weird, you know, experience.
It was like doing a Godzilla movie without using Godzilla.
Yeah, and it was also like, well, have you ever seen a Godzilla, you know, specifically from the point of view of those little people running in the streets? You know,
right.
Usually it's the military, usually it's the scientists.
And it's the overhead shot of him walking through the city.
Yes, and so the only overhead shot you have in Cloverfield is when they're literally in the helicopter flying past it, and you see this thing, you know, wreaking havoc. And that was the fun and the conceit of it. And Matt Reeves, who, by the way, just did this most extraordinary job on War of the Planet of the Apes, if you haven't seen it, you know, Matt directed that movie with a kind of, you know, intimacy and specificity that I think is, you know, makes it so special.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. You know, of course, I wanted to talk to you about Westworld, but congratulations, 22 Emmy nominations for this series, and it comes back in... When, January 2018 or a little later?
We haven't made the announcement yet, but it's
okay. It is next year,
just
though.
Started shooting. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's that, and by the way, music is so important and sound is so important in that show. I love the player piano playing 90s alternative stuff and hard rock to set the scene, or if you know something music cue is happening, something else is going to happen in the story. Right. Brilliant.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it. Well, that's Jonah Nolan and Lisa Joy, and they are just killing it.
And final question, because you've done so many franchises with Star Trek, Star Wars, they all have, you know, collectible lines and figures and things like that. When's the JJ figure coming out? When's the Funko Pop?
You know, yeah, there's such a huge demand.
I want one. I would have had it here if that was the case.
Oh my God. Well, I hope never is the answer.
Of all your influence, it's like you can make all these major projects happen, billions of dollars invested, you can't get a toy.
I know there's just no.
You have not succeeded in this business.
No justice. Yeah.
JJ, thank you so much. I'd love to talk to you again next time you're around, hopefully for Westworld. And congratulations.
Cheers,
thank you so much.
Thanks so much.